Hey everybody, we're so excited to do this today. We've come up with an idea that we just wanted to be able to speak to something that I think is such a prevalent issue. In our church, we really believe it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. Which means this, that we recognize that mental health is a legitimate issue and a legitimate conversation that needs to be happening all the time. And with this extended season of physical isolation and social isolation, there's really the ability for our mental health to kind of take some hits. And so we wanted over the next couple of weeks to come out once a week with a video of us just talking about this topic of mental health and best practices and things we can do to help us navigate this season in the healthiest way possible. So I'm super excited to have with us today a personal friend, my personal counselor. She is a clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, and operates an amazing organization here in town, Tina Smith. Tina, thanks so much for being with us today and taking the time. You know, right now, you are still doing meetings via Zoom and online and different stuff like that, which thank you for doing it. Because I can only imagine that for those of us that our mental health has been, you know, up and down throughout seasons,
Absolutely.
There's a chance that this season is actually pretty intense then.
Absolutely.
Right, so can you just take a second and maybe today it'd be great just to hear some ideas of how do we navigate mental health today? If we're stuck in a spot of self-isolation or with our families, we're gonna talk later about different specific things, but just general, what are some best practices that we can navigate during this season?
So one of the greatest concerns is we go from a structured experience, whether parents are sending their kids to school, we're going off to work, we have some level of structure in our life that we have participated in. And the problem is we've now moved to a place where we're completely isolated in our homes. We might go outside for a little bit, but we often are seeing people stuck in their homes, which increases their level of anxiety around how do we create this life that looked like it was before, but the reality is it's not. So what I would encourage everybody to do is to consider, how do I create structure in my home? Particularly what a lot of parents don't realize is structure creates security, which reduces fear in children. So if they're watching their parents struggle with their own routine, so if a parent is, you know, getting up in the morning and not getting changed out of their pajamas, what that actually says to the kids is there's something not okay with my mom and dad, which means if I'm looking to them to be reassured about what's happening in my life, I need to see that my mom and dad are okay. And truly, I can't really stress to families how important it is just to even do simple things like get up, get dressed, have your shower. If you did have breakfast together as a family, continue to have breakfast together. Or if that wasn't a part of your routine, maybe that's your new routine where you're creating more family opportunities. The parents have to continue, caregivers have to continue as they were even in their home, and then creating structure for their kids. So what we often see and what I'm seeing is our families' anxiety is overwhelming. And in that, what happens is people don't want to get out of bed. Yeah. They don't want to interact in ways that they used to. They don't want to necessarily even interact with their kids. And so it really starts from the foundation of a family. And the foundation to a family is mom and dad. It's the caregivers, it's grandparents, whoever it is that is taking care of the kids needs to begin with themselves. And then you transfer it to your kids. So if you're not okay as an adult, sadly, our kids will not be okay at all. So
I found even in my life that idea of just, you know, at first when it was like, oh yeah, we're home, there's kind of like all the jokes and the memes of like, I'll be on social media and only dress from the waist up and whatnot. But the truth is though, you know, the longer you sit in that, I do feel the more it feels like it's this mud to walk through to get through anything done, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas if you get up, you know, I'm a big one, you know, get dressed, make the bed. Like to me, making the bed is like one of those choices I can make in a day of, am I gonna make it, am I not gonna make it? And if I make it, I feel like I've actually accomplished something before the day's even begun.
Absolutely.
Right? And those can be kind of those, sometimes, I don't know, you're best friend, the little victories are great victories when you add them all up together. Like, oh man, I brushed my teeth today.
Absolutely.
I look good, right? The bed is made. Like before I even tackled any major things in the day, I've got these little W's right there.
Our worth is always associated with some level of productivity. So even for families who have
Mine probably more than anybody's. You know, like,
well, it's interesting because that's a lot of us experience our worth through the things that we can accomplish. And I mean, all of us have to recognize that. So I would say to families who their jobs are no longer, like they're on hold or they're looking at what do we do with this extra stress, is that I can guarantee you every single family has a to-do list that they post in their bulletin board, or it's in their drawer in their office or somewhere in their house. And this is a time, if your value right now is what can I do to produce something?
Listen, you're gonna get me in trouble because I know where you're going with this.
Pull out that list.
No, because I know where you're going. Now Amber's already like, hey, do you remember when you said you didn't have enough time?
Yes.
Well, now you have nothing but time. I'm like, wait, no, it wasn't time that I didn't do that.
That's right.
It was I didn't want to do those chores.
But it's true though, right? Like how often do we say, oh, we should paint this room, or I really need to organize my storage room in the basement? There is truly, because if we think about what our filter is to our kids, if we got up and went to work every day and we can't do that, what can we show our kids in terms of how can we create a family opportunity and being productive together as a family? And that really does ground kids. It grounds people. And what we're truly needing in this time during the pandemic is to feel grounded and stabilized in our life. Because when someone says you can't go to work, the government says you can't do this, and it is for a good reason. It is to protect people, to keep people healthy. And that's a good thing. So how can we keep our own families healthy and still feel very grounded in a time that is very overwhelming for many? So,
well, you know more about this, but I think kids need actual structure as well.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. They really do. And I would say, so think about what happens at a school. So school, they have their breaks, they have their nutrition breaks, they have time outside, they have structured play, they have unstructured play, they have creative time, they have their academics. Really, the greatest thing for kids is you're not going to necessarily make it look like a school where it's that routine, but you could very well say, hey, kids, instead of getting up at 7 in the morning, you can still sleep in a little bit, but we're still going to have an academic time. We're still going to have a creative time. I know with my kids, I was immediately, okay, as soon as March break is off, we're going to start creative. So I have free time, creative time, outdoor time, academic time. And the reality is I feel like my kids are more responsible now.
Yeah.
Because I've given them this sense of independence with structure at the same time. So they're actually doing really well. And that's okay, but I think it's in the structure that's allowed for it, and I've made it very transparent. They have like charts everywhere. So whatever we can do to help our kids developmentally understand what structure looks like, and it's appropriate to the age. Like we're not gonna ask a 5-year-old to do what the 10-year-old is doing. We might change it up a little bit, but it's helping ease the anxiety of kids. I wanna also add, all of us as adults, because of what's happening around the world, we're all trying to figure out what does life look like for us. We don't know how long this is gonna last, but how often do all of us turn on the television to hear the stats or listen to the news? And one of the things that I just wanna caution every caregiver, every parent, every grandparent is be mindful of the little ears that are also listening to the news, that even though you might do it because you need to, it's still be mindful of how frequent, how often you're listening, and how often little ears are in the background also listening and hearing the same things. And that increases the adults' unrest and stress and anxiety, which then, again, you think about it, if you're not okay as an adult, can you imagine the little people who have an underdeveloped brain who also are experiencing that anxiety? So I think being mindful of how often you're being exposed to the news is important.
Yeah, I've been trying to encourage our people to really, obviously we have to read the news. We have to we want to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
But moderation is actually so important in this season, right? Because news a lot of time, not that I'm against it, but news a lot of time has an agenda that it's trying to push of some sort.
Yeah.
And that is to create that sense of urgency or that sense of panic so people stay home. But if you're staying home and reading that, you constantly, it actually become a major trigger to a lot of people to just that unsettledness and that unhealthiness.
Absolutely does. So
with talking about schedules, like I will say, even as a dad, when I sat my kids down and said, hey, we're starting a schedule, they're like, no, that's so unfair. They have all their friends who don't have schedules. Yeah. But I would say now that we're into it for a couple of weeks, my kids actually don't balk or fight about it. They actually know what to do in each season, because we same thing as you walked out just segments of throughout the day at different points. And so I do think somehow that these kids, although the initial thought may be they're going to hate us, I think they actually thrive for it and do well in that environment.
Yeah. And you will hear kids say, wow, my day went by really fast. If you didn't have a schedule, we are creating an environment where our kids are going to fight more, where they're in each other's space, or they're doing the annoying picking on because I'm bored, and then you're trying to deal with all the conflict. So structure removes the ability to have less conflict, but kids will naturally feel like, wow, when did it get to be 2:30 or 3:30, however your day is set up? Whereas, when none of us have a schedule, it feels like the hours just tick by. And because we really don't know what's happening this time, it is better to create structure so that they feel like their day has been filled, and it feels good for them as well. They feel successful.
So let me ask you the extreme opposite of that, though.
Okay.
So, structures, I'm a structured person, so sitting in those is a natural for me. Some people, that's not as natural. But what do we do with the fact that so many of us feel like we have no control right now?
I know.
And so some of the conversations I'm having with people as I'm navigating how to navigate this time is they've actually swung that structure pendulum like way, way too far over. And they're going to go, well, I'll control what I can control, and have created almost a military kind of sense, or a statement I hear a lot is, I feel like I'm walking around the house on eggshells because I'm afraid of, something's out of place or whatnot. How do you counter going, we need structure,
but not so
recognizing
far.
Our mental health is actually, we can't control right now. We are at the mercy of God. We're at the mercy of our government. We're at the mercy of what's taking place.
I think I would have people ask themselves why they've become so extreme. And the first thing that I would encourage everybody to recognize is that anytime the pendulum swings so far the other way, is that we swing that far because within ourselves, we're feeling so fearful. And that to swing to the extreme where it almost feels militant is it actually reduces our sense of fear, but I would really want people to understand that's a false sense of security. The problem with that is, to the extreme, is that if you can't control, and we can't control every element of what's happening in your home, even if we have such a regimented schedule, our kids cannot thrive in that. So the problem is say our schedule involves from 10 to 11, we have to do this. And if it doesn't happen on the dot at 11 o'clock, that caregiver, that parent, that grandparent, whoever's looking after the kids gets a rise in their fear, and it turns into reaction. And reaction becomes compounding, and it's actually not fixing the fear. So I think it's really mindful and great, Jeff, that you brought that up, because really what we want people to do is balance freedom and schedule, because too far is only going to increase fear, and to have people recognize that a false sense of security is not sustainable. And it's only going to cause more pain and panic in the adults, and it's going to transfer to the kids as well, who really don't understand what's happening at all.
Well, and this is the hard part about life, is that we can't control it.
We can't.
Right? Whether it be this scenario that we're in now, whether it be, our health. Like, there's things we can control about our health, and then there's sicknesses that come in that are way beyond our ability, right? And for those of us that are control freaks, this is a kind of a wake-up call to how little control we have.
I know.
And that's hard, but I do want to encourage you, this is where faith comes in, right? Like, to me, that's where I go, okay, I can't control this, and I would like to, and I like being the master of my own destiny type idea. But this is where I go, okay, but God, I do know that you're in control.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's a big step for some people to take, to go, okay, yeah, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, but he kind of sits here, and then I've got this, right?
Yeah.
And what's that old song that's going to date me now? Jesus, take the wheel, right?
Yeah.
There's a dated song.
But that's Shania Twain.
I don't even know who it was. I don't think it was Shania Twain. We're in trouble now. Now we got to give rights to somebody. But like, there's something powerful about when you can come to that spot where, you know what? Every one of us is in this situation. Every one of us is battling. No one has control. Even the government doesn't really have control. We're at mercy, right?
Yeah.
But God is in control.
Absolutely. And trusting that, right? Trusting that God truly at the end wants to prosper us and not harm us. And that he truly is in control of this situation. And he is not behind this. He has not caused this. But I know that confidently God is going to redeem this. And what I would say is, if we could all step back and truly look at what God is redeeming in this current time. He's redeeming families. He is creating more opportunities for intimate families who actually are connecting. We are seeing churches rise out of a building, and God actually is having more power today as a result of the pandemic. So he is redeeming this. It may not always feel that way. And I think that's what I love about the song Waymaker, right? Is that it may not feel like God is in control, but he is always, always making a way, and we have to trust that.
Always.
Always.
Well, in closing, I want to say thank you so much. This is so awesome. I hope you've enjoyed the day, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And now, here's our goal, to produce this once a week. Now, in closing, I just want to say this. If you're sitting here feeling like, man, I don't have a schedule, I failed, or my kids are looking at this entire season and it's just going to be, all they're going to remember is mom or dad yelling, I want to just calm you down. First off, none of us are perfect. We all fail. Well, maybe Tina's perfect, but I know I'm not. Amber will tell you right away I'm not. But we all fail. The second thing is I want to encourage you, just start, right? Like, however that looks, if it's just, hey, I'm going to start with a 15-minute schedule of the whole day, or what that looks like, just start. Start somewhere, and you'll be amazed how when you start, how the rest of the steps will just kind of fall into play. If you're over-scheduling and you're being over-restrictive, then I want to encourage you to remember God's grace. Remember how much God has been graceful to us, and apply those to others, and really wrestle through what Tina said. Why are we built to so much structure, and will that security last? Or is there somewhere else we should place that security? And then in closing, I want to remind you that our kids are resilient. The truth is many times where I feel like I failed, and my kids will tell me that was one of the funnest seasons of their lives. And so God's got them, and he's got you in this season. So let's take a second and let's pray. God, thank you for this conversation. I pray, Lord, that we would be healthy through this season, and that we would create healthy schedules for our families to navigate, whether that be our kids or whether that be us as individuals. God, I pray that you'd help us to do projects and accomplish some things so that we can get a sense of security of that we're actually doing and accomplishing things. God, I pray for those of us that have created too strict of a schedule. God, would your grace become alive to us, and may we experience that in a powerful and real way. And Lord, I pray for healing to be released upon our nation. God, I pray for those that are battling sickness. May they experience the fullness of your healing power. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.